Check. Hiya, welcome to my Compound Life. I'm your host, Jonathan. Nice to see you all. Hope all of you have a great weekend. It is the 10th of November, Monday, 2025. So welcome. Okay, so before we get started, I think there has been some new development. Always remember that when it comes to Bitcoin, there will always be new development that can potentially change the narratives, change the trends, and so forth, right? So before we get ahead, let's look at Bitcoin price. Right now, it's around 106,000. I think it peaked earlier at 106,670. So it is getting more positive because I think a couple of days ago, on the 7th, so that was the Friday, Bitcoin was down to about 99 or 98,000 US dollars, right? So a lot of positive development on Bitcoin right now. And at the same time, I think there are looking at the inflow in terms of Bitcoin inflow, a little bit like in the US, it's called the Bitcoin ETF. In the UK, it's equivalent to the Bitcoin ETP. So in terms of the inflow for the US on last Friday, it was actually outflow more. Approximately 558 million outflow. In comparison to Thursday last week, it was actually 240 million inflow, right? So it has been mainly outflow for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the past 7 working days, right? With one of it of the inflow on last Friday. So very likely when US market open today, hopefully we should see more inflow as opposed to outflow. So what exactly has the narrative changed in the past couple of days, especially over the weekend? I think US government shutdown will finally be ending because US Senate just voted 60-40 to end government shutdown over the weekend. I think that it was on Sunday. So meaning within days, the US government will reopen very soon, right? But more importantly, I think this week really matters, right? Because the TGA balance is sitting near to USD 953 billion. So, and TGA actually stands for Treasury General Account and is the US Treasury primary cash management account. So this represents the government's ready cash on hand for day-to-day operation, right? So Treasury spending will push this liquidity into the market very soon, right? Very likely this will land into growth and risk asset, just as Fed ending quantitative tightening in December, right? So does it mean all of this will count down into Bitcoin? I think we're gonna have to wait and see, right? But secondly, it's also with SEC back to work. So any of the pending altcoin ETF will likely move forward, right? So I know we talk about Bitcoin more in my Compound Life, but this is something to bear in mind because once SEC, the US SEC is back to work, many of the altcoin ETF, that altcoin meaning the crypto altcoin that are in the ETF application process will be approved, meaning more and more liquidity will be going through into the system, and more people might also get into investing into crypto assets in the future. But certainly, pro-crypto bills stuck in Congress will be expected to pass once legislative operations resume. I know, and this last point is nothing to do with government shutdown, but Trump also indicated, Trump also approved $2,000 for each American, from the tariffs gain, apparently. So money printing will be accelerating, right? So from this perspective, what it really indicates is liquidity definitely coming back into risk assets, right? Let's not just assume all of this will be coming into Bitcoin, but liquidity will be coming into risk assets, and that's very positive, right? So last week we were talking mainly about taking profits, etc., etc. But I think now some of these narratives changes. I think that the biggest two headlines to look forward to would be number one would be Trump's checks. We call them Trump's checks, stimulus checks or whatever, right? Approximately $2,000 per person in the US. And I think back in the COVID years or COVID months, when stimulus checks were printed, immediately it gives risk assets, growth stocks, Bitcoin, an immediate boost, right? So that's something to look forward to. And also, we spoke about US market opening soon, right? So essentially, that's a good thing too. Essentially means, I think, up to about 900 billion worth of US dollars will be cascaded down, be pushed back into the system, and very likely some of that will be landed back into your equity market, Bitcoin, and so forth, right? However, I just want to warn all of us, all of you guys, that this might not be immediate, right? It's not going to be immediate in a way that, it's going to be in the coming days that Bitcoin will pump or go back to its previous all-time high of 126,000, right? All of these are still pending, right? And it's definitely something to look forward to. I personally have been buying some of the dips. I think some of the recent dip at around $98,000, $99,000. But at the same time, I've also been, taking profits at around $115,000, $126,000. Essentially, because it was such a great time in taking profits, right? So this is why it's quite important to highlight that you don't really have to wait until Bitcoin reaches certain peak in order to cash out all, right? So I think I want to bring your attention back into some of the things that I've mentioned before, like treating Bitcoin like a bank, right? It's kind of like a store of value for your pounds, for your US dollars, right? And what you want to do is, when there's a lot of fear in the market, you kind of want to accumulate a little bit like what we did in the past weeks when the ETF outflow, it's actually much bigger than any of the ETF inflow, right? And when the blood in the market, that's when you want to buy and accumulate, right? So you don't really have to keep holding onto your bag and really wait until the all-time high, or time it in a way that you're all in or you're all out. Okay, so that's something that I've learned throughout the years and actually shifted my mindset, right? Because with very minimal investable money that you have, right, it's always hard to time the market, right? And what you want to do is to get in and get out. Always have some cash lying around that you can immediately jump in, enjoy it, and buy the dips, right? So that's something to bear in mind. And go on then. Yeah, so that's something to bear in mind and enjoy the process of taking profit and being invested in an asset such as Bitcoin, where you know that you will have the ability to store any values, right? Like your pounds, your euros, or your dollars for a much more longer period of time, right? This is where, you know, you need to have that mindset of not being scared when the price are dropping, right? So as a recap, how we should really be approaching this is essentially, you know, DCA in, or pound cost average, or dollar cost averaging in, as well as dollar cost averaging or pound cost average out. So have that in your plan. Potentially, I think what's happening right now, the bulls are taking over the market. Potentially, I'm hoping that would be right, or otherwise this would be another weekend scam pump, or a weekend, you know, Bitcoin pump that never quite lasted, right? So hopefully we should have a very positive week, leading on to a positive December. I think that's something a lot of us are looking forward to. But at the same time, you know, if we are blessed enough to, you know, get back up to our all-time high, I don't think by December we'll get back up to our all-time high again. I'm thinking more likely by Q1 next year we might be able to get back to, you know, 120k-ish or 126k-ish. You know, treat that as a lesson to start taking profit. You know, if you kind of got in Bitcoin at the low, right? And really bear in mind that, you know, we're not gonna keep on rising in terms of Bitcoin, right? In terms of a lot of your equity, stocks and shares, you know, we're not gonna keep on going up for an indefinite period of time. It's, you know, it's gonna come to a point that all of this will be going down quite soon, right? So bear that in mind. Keep on taking profits, right? Don't be greedy. Keep on taking profits. You know, you have, if you got in the low, you definitely have more downside risk as opposed to upside risk, right? So the best we can do to manage the situation is to keep taking profit, and don't be the sucker that keep holding your bag until the next bear market comes, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna monitor the market. At my next taking profit target, I will take profit. I will have some cash aside. Cash aside meaning cash for my lifestyle, cash for my holiday trips, for family, cash to pay off some of my debt, property debt, or whatever, and more importantly, cash enough to make sure that I get to buy in again whenever there dips for Bitcoin or for whatever opportunities, right? Yeah, so I think that's what I want to share with all of you guys today. I think a lot of exciting news ahead, because I think these two things, right? The Trump stimulus check, and at the same time the opening of US government. So it's not by Monday, I need to highlight, right? I think it could be the following few more days, or next week. But at the same time, we are seeing that Bitcoin prices are improving, right? But don't have the expectation that once the announcement gets pushed through, immediately Bitcoin's going to get back to 120k or 126k, the previous all-time high. But be prepared that when the next all-time high comes, right, especially when we are getting much more closer into Q1 or Q2 next year, for me, in my mind, I constantly remind myself to take profit and be prepared to get out of the market completely, right? But when I say completely, you need to also bear in mind that you need to treat Bitcoin like a bank, right? So there will always be a small portion of Bitcoin that you want to get out of the market, so that you stay liquid, you still have cash on hand, right? But there will always be another portion of Bitcoin that you want to remain in the market, and let it compound, right? Because essentially this would be like gold, that you want to keep it for a longer period of time. You want keep it like your S&P 500 for a longer period of time because of the compounding effect, right? And remember that Bitcoin has a good compounding return. I think MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor actually stated that in the coming few years, Bitcoin will still have a good CAGR of 35% plus per annum, right? And that's very good. That's very good in comparison to your VUSA, VUSA, your Vanguard, S&P 500 ETF tracking for the US, right? So bear in mind that. And apart from that, that's it. I want to talk about. I'll talk about some other stuff on my next ride. Okay, so thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you haven't already done so. Really appreciate if you can drop a like. But at the same time, do subscribe if you want to keep up my content. I'm just an amateur investor, but I've been in the game this is my third cycle. I've done well, not the first, but the second cycle, when I've gotten to learn more about Bitcoin and the timing of it. And I'm doing a lot more better in my third cycle. And I do believe heavily that every one of us should really also be in Bitcoin too. Especially how UK is progressing right now. I think over the weekend we've heard Rachel Reeves will be cutting more of our what would you call them? Cutting our savings, right? ISA saving, reducing it from £20,000 to about £12,000 for the cash ISA, right? So bear that in mind. Where would it be the best place to store more of your hard-earned cash? I somehow think Bitcoin would be the right investment vehicle. Okay, invested asset. Okay, so yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching My Compound Life.